Hey guys, it's Bree here with Blossom and Branch Farm, and if you're anything like me, this is the time of year where you are getting inundated by seed catalogs and you want to grow all of the things. And this is especially true of flowers. I have grown almost everything that is out there in terms of cut flower production. And so today I'm going to be sharing with you 3 that I am not growing this year and 3 good swaps for those flowers. So if you're on the fence about flowers, if you have a limited space and you're not sure what to focus on, hopefully this video will help you redline some items from that list. Let's go. Now, when I started out, I wanted to grow absolutely everything. And so over the years, I have grown lots of different and unique cut flowers. I've trialed a lot of different things as cut flowers. And I've learned that there are a lot of things that are just either not worth my time, or I wasn't that big of a fan of them, or they didn't sell well, or they didn't do well in bouquets, any number of things. And while my observations are true of myself, they might not be true for you. So don't let this discourage you. If there are things that you want to grow that are on this list, go ahead and grow them. Don't let me talk you out of it. If this topic interests you, you can always go back and watch our video that we did last year of the 5 things that we're not growing anymore as cut flowers, which included things like tulips, and explains our reasoning for those. But this year I've come up with a couple more. The first one I'm going to mention is definitely popular, especially for bedding plants and in flower gardens. It is lauded as being great for helping prevent pest damage in the garden, and that one is marigolds. So marigolds are very popular because they're quick and easy to grow from seed. So a lot of nurseries provide them, a lot of nurseries sell them, and they are also known for being a good trap crop or good at keeping pests away from plants. So often recommended as an interplant, but in cut flower production, they have been grown more and more as a good and easy cut flower. Now, I do like marigolds. Again, this is not like I don't like this flower. That's not necessarily it. I'm just not growing them for cut flower production. There's a couple reasons for that. One is the colors. So the color palette of marigolds tends to be pretty bright primary oranges and yellows. And while that might be someone else's style and taste, it just doesn't go with the palette of a lot of the things that I grow in the field. So what I like to do before I'm laying out my flower garden is I kind of go through and I clip out photos. You can just do this on your desktop or in Canva or any photo app, and I just pull photos of all the different flowers I want to grow and I put them into a gallery, and I do kind of a vision board for my flower garden. And by doing that, I can kind of see what my color palette is looking like. So when I put something like marigolds into that color palette, I can see right off the bat that it doesn't fit in. It's not going to play nice with the other flowers in my bouquets. And that's one of the main reasons. Now, there are white marigolds that you can grow. I believe they're called Kilimanjaro. There are a couple different names for them. And we have grown them before, but the white ones show pest damage a lot. They also tend to brown very easily. And so they didn't do particularly well for me in bouquets as a cut flower. All that to say, as a bedding plant, I'm totally fine with them. Again, it's just for me, cutting palette wise, they don't really go with the palette that I like to grow. And they are a little bit difficult to harvest because they are so heavily branching. There is a lot of side pruning that has to happen in order to get nice long shoots. It's usually late in the season when we're finally getting tall marigolds, and make sure that if you are growing marigolds for cut flowers that you're selecting the right varieties that are going to get tall enough to cut. I do think there is a good swap for this, and of course it happens to be a native, which I always love, which is Rudbeckia. And I like Rudbeckia as a swap because the colors can be a little bit more muted. Now, Rudbeckia triloba, which is one of the ones that I like to grow a lot because of its dancey qualities, but the flowers are smaller. So even though it's also primary yellow, the flowers are small, they're dainty, it's cute. I really like that one as a swap for marigolds. I also like other hybrid Rudbeckias, so things like Cherry Brandy Rudbeckia, Cherokee Sunset Rudbeckia, which have still kind of orange and yellows, but a little bit more muted. So they play better with my other bouquets and my other flowers in terms of color palette. And they're a native, like I mentioned. So they serve other benefits in the garden, like attracting beneficials, being good for pollinators. Of course, when we're talking about pollinators and native plants, if we're really looking to serve pollinators, it's always best to be selecting as close to the straight native version as possible. So trying to avoid cultivars and hybrids in that case. So in that case, you'd want to go with the straight native versions of Rudbeckia instead of the hybrids like Cherokee Sunset and Cherry Brandy. Hope that makes sense. Second one that I am not growing as a cut flower probably ever again is calendula. Again, calendula, not that I don't like it as a flower. In fact, I grow a lot of calendula for teas. I grow a lot of calendula because we do infused oils and we make salves and lotions out of that oil. You can head over and watch our salve video if you want to see how we do that. So I do like calendula, but I don't like harvesting it for cut flowers. Number one, it's sticky. So calendula as a plant has kind of there's no really other way to describe it other than sticky. If you see cottonwood flying around in the air and it's sticking to things, calendula is something it's going to stick to. We have a lot of cottonwoods in this area, so that's always a bit of a pain. Just trying to clean off the calendula when we harvest it. So harvesting it is tough. Again, it's sticky. It's just a weird, unpleasant feeling. I don't like harvesting it. It also goes to seed pretty quickly. So we have a narrow window to harvest calendula if we're going to use it in a bouquet. We have to do it when the flowers still have not yet opened and it hasn't gone to seed yet. So calendula, tricky on the harvest, doesn't feel very good to me to harvest, and it's not something that particularly jumps out at me as being impressive in a bouquet. If we're looking for a swap, we're going to want something that is also easy to direct sow, because that's one of the great things about calendula, something that is good for pollinators and something that has a similar petal shape. So for that, I am looking at zinnias, and you guys know I have a whole video about growing zinnias. I adore zinnias. They are so lovely to grow because they're so easy. Now, this is true in my zone. It might not be true for everybody because I have a dry, arid climate. Zinnias like that. They like poor soils. We have heavy clay soil. So zinnias do well for me, and they are also easy to direct sow. In fact, they prefer to be direct sowed. They don't want rich soil. They don't want a ton of water, and they have a very pretty, beautiful, roughly shape. Now, the advantage also of zinnias over calendula is that they have so many different colors, so many different shapes, so many different sizes. So if it's the color of calendula you're looking for, you can replicate that in a zinnia. The third one that I'm not growing anymore, and I had mentioned this one in an old video, but I'm just reiterating it, is annual scabiosa. I love saying scabiosa because people think it sounds like a Harry Potter spell. And do not get me wrong, annual scabiosa are very pretty. I think they're a very neat flower, but they are smaller. We've grown the scoop scabiosas, which tend to be bigger. For me, the work that is required in harvesting annual scabiosa, because they're so bushy, they're branchy, they put off a lot of different side shoots, so you're having to trim those off, and then those side shoots are often going to seed when you're trying to harvest the other ones. So with scabiosa, you really want to harvest them before all of the petals have fully opened for best vase life. So again, there's kind of a stage where you need to be sure you're catching them at. And the other downside is that, again, they're going to seed pretty quickly, and they're very spindly and small and difficult to harvest. So scabiosa, when we grew them, if we could keep up with keeping them deadheaded and keeping the seed production down, that helped prolong their life and prolong their bloom period. But it was still always a bit of a pain to harvest them. And so for that reason, I'm doing a very easy swap, and I grow perennial scabiosa instead. There are a lot of advantages of the perennial form of scabiosa over the annual. There's also a couple downsides. So the downsides being that the perennial scabiosa pretty much is much more limited in color, right? So where annual scabiosa, we can have some peachies and some purples and some different colors. With the perennial scabiosa, we're a little bit more limited. Mostly we're looking at blues and also whites, but the advantages outweigh that for me. So long stems, we're not having to deal with all the side branching stems. Perennial scabiosa have one long shoot. They're very easy to harvest. To me, they have a longer bloom period, so they bloom longer before they do go to seed. So it gives me more time to harvest them, and they're bigger, so they're more impactful. So perennial scabiosa bloom is larger. Now, that being said, we are starting those from seed about now here, late January is when we'll be starting those from seed, and then planting them out 6 to 8 weeks before last frost. They are perennial, so again, this is always good news, something that's going to come back every year, but there's a chance they're not going to bloom for you in your first year, so just be mindful of that with perennial scabiosa. I think I finally kind of honed it down and scaled back to the things that I really only enjoy growing and that I find do well in bouquets and play well with all the other flowers, versus things that I just grow because I see them and I am drawn in by the lovely photos of what they look like, and then I forget what they're like to harvest. So if you want to see more of the things that we're not growing anymore, you can head over to our video from last year. We also talked there about why we don't do tulips anymore. And also let me know down below, what are some things that you're not growing this year, some things you are growing this year. I want to hear what you guys are kind of not loving growing in the garden in terms of flowers. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you guys around here next time at the farm. What are your favorite flowers, Roosevelt? No comment? Dahlias. You're being rude.